All right, we are officially live. And take it away, Bree.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Bree Hill, and I'm the moderator for today. So thank you to you three ladies and to Love Sweet Arrow for hosting this and for inviting me to chat with you today. Okay, before we get too into it, because I have a lot of questions, there is a box that you can order through Love Sweet Arrow, and you can get copies of all three of your books from the Moonlight Ridge trilogy, which is why we're here, and a candle from Novelly Yours. Did I miss anything, ladies? Is that
and a custom bookmark?
And a custom bookmark.
Moonlight Ridge bookmark.
And possible unstated goodies.
So, okay, you three, Joss, let's start with you. Go ahead and introduce yourselves. And I want to know your category romance origin story.
Hi there. Obviously my name's Joss. I live in South Africa. I currently write for Harlequin Desire and for Harlequin Presents. And just so awesome to be here and saying hello from across the world. My category romance, I entered a competition 10 years ago, 11 years ago maybe. Time flies. A writing competition that was sponsored by Mills and Boon. And it was short story, and it was 750 words, and it got sent off to the editors in London. And they came back and asked me to develop it. And I worked with Flo Nickel in London, and then I got a contract to write for what was then Harlequin Kiss. There was a line of Harlequin Kiss books for about maybe 2 years, 18 months, 2 years. And from then I went to Desire, and I've recently, in the last 3 or 4 books, I'm also writing for Presents. So yeah, I love it. I'm just have my dream job. It's such fun.
Thank you. Karen?
I'm Karen Booth. I live in North Carolina, about a half an hour from Reese. Who's next? I am from Minnesota, and I'm a Midwestern girl transplanted in the South. Although I feel more Southern now than I feel Midwestern. My category romance origin story is I published it was actually the very first book I wrote, but the third book that was published, called Bring Me Back, which was published with a small press called Turquoise Morning Press, which doesn't exist anymore. But Patience Bloom at Harlequin, a friend of a friend of a friend, recommended the book to her. And she read it and sent me an email and said, I think you should try to write for Harlequin. And so Patience and I just kind of looked at the different lines and tried to decide where we thought my writing strengths would work best. And we decided it was Desire. And then she helped me put together my proposal. I will say the first proposal, totally rejected. Totally rejected. And it was, and it was rejected before it got to Stacey Boyd and Desire, and that Patience was like, this is so great. There's so much tension between them, so much conflict. But I made the hero an artist, and she was like, even though he made a lot of money, she was like, this isn't going to work anyway. But unfortunately, the whole entire storyline hinged on him being an artist. And so I had to completely throw out the synopsis and redo all the chapters and everything. And it took a while, but so that's that. And I think I put out my first Desire in 2015.
I love that you said Patience Bloom. I'm like, she's written one of my favorite memoirs.
Oh, it's amazing.
My day job.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Yeah. And she's amazing. I love working with her.
Miss Reese.
I am Reese Ryan. I write sexy, emotional, grown folks romantic fiction featuring lots of family drama, surprising secrets, and a cast of complicated, sometimes messy characters. As Karen said, I live in Central North Carolina, not far from her. And so my origin story for category romance is I first wrote for Korean Press. I had pitched them, and my editor there at the time was living in Cleveland, which is where I'm originally from, and that's where that story was set. I think that helped. You don't find a whole lot of stories set in Cleveland. And so I wrote for them. I wrote a couple of books for them, and then I ended up moving over to. I was actually gonna indie publish my next series, and I had decided, oh yeah, let me try pitching it to Kamani Romance. I did. I didn't hear from them. I was like a couple of days from hitting publish, and I was like, well, let me tweet, nudge them and see what they say. And they came back and said, yes, we want it. So I ended up moving that series over to my Pleasure Cove series to Kamani Romance. So I started with them, and then from there I was invited to pitch a series to Harlequin Desire. So that's kind of been my category romance journey.
How would you three describe Desire to anyone who hasn't read it yet?
I'll start.
Sexy.
It's
glamorous.
Sexy. It's sexy. It's slightly more, while it's featuring quite wealthy characters, I'd say that it's slightly more down to earth. I think it's relatable. It's quite relatable. And it's fun. It's just a fun, we have fun. I think
You do have
love
fun.
it.
I think about the drama too in this particular line. So
Right. It can get a little soap opera-ish, but that's sort of fun,
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the most out there thing I could do? Okay, let's do that.
How can I torture you today?
Because y'all brought the torture with this trilogy. Okay. So let's go back to 2019. Joss, it was in your Dear Reader in the first book, Homecoming Heartbreaker.
Yeah.
You all were at the 2019 RWA conference.
2
And
years ago.
you write in your Dear Reader that you suggested to Reese and Karen that you write another series of interconnected books. So was this something you had already been thinking of doing since the previous one, or was it just like in that moment, seeing your friends like, we should do a thing? How did it happen?
I think how it happened was we had actually written a series before called Dynasty's Secret of the A-List. And funny enough, that came out 2 years ago, round about this time. I actually just checked today. And it was a 4-book series written with Cat Shield. And the three of us, I think we just like really, really hit it off. And I'd like to just say that thank God we don't live close to each other, because we'd never get any work done because we'd always just be having tea or coffee or lunch or something. And then we kind of were just chatting and at RWA, and I thought, okay, well, we had fun. This was fun. Let's just throw something together. And I happened to be having a meeting with Stacey Boyd at RWA, and I said, oh, Karen, Reese and I want to write something. She said, well, send me a proposal. And we did. And that's how it kind of all came about. It wasn't really, I hadn't really thought about it. I just saw my mates and thought, well, cool, I want to work with you lovely ladies again, and let's just throw it out there. What's the worst that can happen? Somebody says no, and they didn't. And we had such fun. Well, I had fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was amazing. It was so amazing, especially coming up with it from the very beginning, from scratch. Because we've worked together, all of us, not only on that project, but on Texas Calvin Club projects, and so we got to work together, and that was fun. But we had to, we had like a kind of a set thing that we had to fit, the story into, or we had a story Bible that we had to work with. This time we got to create our own story Bible. Yeah. So there's never any of those. I would never do that, So we could actually work through all of that, and we create stories that that we wanted to write. And it was just so much fun coming up with the whole concept and all the little details and stuff. I loved it.
And so can I just jump in? One of the first things, funny enough, we were all right at the beginning, all on the same page with, is that we wanted it to be diverse. We didn't know how it was going to be diverse, but that was something that didn't even need to be explained or discussed, or it was just instinctively, we all wanted to write a diverse series of characters, diverse series of books. And I think the way we came up with that was quite interesting. I kind of liked the way we did that. As we blow our own trumpets.
So the trilogy follows, it's centered around these 3 brothers. So we have Mac in the first book, Gray in the second book, and Travis in the third book. So how did you all take us back let's go back to like the beginning stages. How did you decide whose brother story fit where? Because I do feel like it flowed perfectly, but how did you all decide how the stories were going to go?
Karen, you go.
I mean, I think part of it was Mac was the oldest. So it sort of made sense that that initial burden of, okay, our dad has had this health problem. It always falls first on the oldest, I think. In most families, that's the way it works. And then, part of Gray's character, the hero in my book, is that he's sort of the peacemaker. And I also felt like because the accident that happened when they were in high school that sort of drove them apart affected Travis the most. So we get all this buildup about Travis over 2 books, where we talk about the different ways, at least hint at the ways that he was affected. And then we get him in the 3rd book. So I felt like it built well. Anyway, I think that it just made sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was very organic, I think. I think that's the point. It just seemed to just work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was the thing that was so amazing about it to me, is how it all fell together, how we decided on like each brother and who he was going to be and what his issue was, and then the order of it just all felt so organic, and it almost felt I'm going to say effortless, even though I know we put a lot of work into it, but that part of it seemed like it was kind of effortless in how it came together. So yeah, it was amazing.
I agree.
So I don't want to give too much away, but we do get their father Jameson's perspective throughout the trilogy, which I loved. It was so funny. Him wanting to sneak his cigars, not knowing that Jada knows that he's hidden them already. So what inspired the choice of giving Jameson some love? Because he has a romance that kind of blooms throughout the trilogy. Like, why did y'all want to include him?
For me, I know one thing I was thinking is that we were kind of thinking about like how Texas Cattlemen's Club is, and in the Dynasty trilogy we did as well, there was more than one point of view. And in one of the TCC ones I did, it definitely had an older couple who fell in love, and I was like, oh, that would be so cool to do something like that. Something like that. So we were able to. It was. I think we were pretty much readily in agreement about that, about giving Jameson a voice in the book. And I'm kind of like on right now, loving giving these background stories to an older couple. So that was perfect. And I love his character. He's something.
Yeah, my first time reading a chapter and it's Jameson's, I was like, wait a minute, this is Jameson. He's all right. He's actually kind of a slickster. I wasn't expecting it. Okay, each brother returns to Moonlight Ridge very adamant about their stay being temporary. They come to this agreement. We're each going to do like 2 or 3 months, and then the next brother comes in. It all starts, I'm only here for a couple of months, and then I'm going back. So my question for each of you is, what do you enjoy about writing the returning home and finding love story in your books? In this book, in this trilogy?
Who wants to go first?
You go.
Okay.
I'm old. I need to think.
The thing I liked about it, so Gray, my hero, is very grumpy and sort of just pessimistic. And so he's already, he's definitely a fish out of water with the heroine, Autumn, because she's so sunny. But, he's bringing that attitude into what was once his very loving atmosphere, and it was not the environment that our 3 heroes grew up in. They were all foster kids and all adopted. And so it's so much of, at least in my book, it's coming home is so much of his character arc, because it is about going back to, what Jameson gave them, this like loving, life, because he has not been living that at all. He's been lonely and head down, immersed in work, and it's made him bitter and a not, super fun person to be around at first. So for me, that was what I really liked about it.
And I love that you say he's grumpy, because when we get Travis's book, I was like, Gray is like so fun. He's like laughing and making jokes all the time. Like,
That's true.
the awkward brother scenarios, he's the one to like try to make everybody laugh. And I'm like, oh, he's happy now.
Yeah.
When I was reading through the trilogy and myself, and I was reading through Karen's book, I'm like, that's perfect. That like he goes through this, and then he's like on the other side. Now he's past that kind of grumpiness.
Yeah,
he is kind of the tells some jokes and stuff in my book. So, but what I love about the whole coming back, I mean, I just like this idea of it kind of being 2 or almost 3 love stories. Like the person falls in love with the love interest, yes, but then they kind of also fall in love with home and family and stuff again. They're kind of he's kind of finding his way back to himself. So I love this arc of all this kind of finding your journey and dealing with your stuff from the past and all that kind of stuff that we get in this series for each of the books, especially for Travis. He definitely gets to deal with a lot of his past. So I guess I just love being able to do that and kind of seeing people kind of, because stuff that happens to us early in our life can really mess your life up. So I like this idea of writing these stories of people who eventually figure it out and, find the path that they're supposed to be on or find happiness again. So, and I think we found that for each of the brothers. And so I love that.
Yeah. I think for Mac, one of the things is that they were such good friends. They were like such awesome friends for so long. And although he ended up falling in love with her, I think he fell in love with that friendship as well, to come back, not only with the family and his father and, and he's so responsible, and he felt so, because he was the oldest and he feels so responsible, but he fell back in love with friendship as well as this. I've always said that for me, love is like friendship on fire. And that for me was exploring that, about falling back in love with this person physically and sexually, but also back in love with their friendship. And that was pretty special for me. It was one of my favorite parts of this book, writing the story. So it was kind of more than a reunion romance for me. It was like a reunion friendship as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Molly, I think that's the part that, as a reader, it felt like really hurt her the most. Like, we were best friends and you just up and left me. And like, it was some romance there, but like, as friends, I felt like you could have handled this a little bit differently. And it was just, I think Matt didn't get that at first. I don't think he didn't get it at first.
I think I said something to the extent that she missed her lover, but she mourned her friend. And that, I think, was basically the essence of, because she didn't actually have anybody else. It was Jamison and Mac. Those were the 2 people. Her family was so completely useless. So those were her 2 pillars. And she kind of felt like she betrayed Jamison, and then this other pillar got pulled away from her. So she was bereft in many ways. So yeah.
Well, let's get into my questions about each book. So Homecoming Heartbreaker, it's childhood sweethearts, second chance-ish between Molly and Mac. And while I was totally rooting for them, but I was also on edge the entire time because Molly's family, they suck.
They are
There's like no other way to put it. So, okay, what inspired, like, where did the family part of that story come from? It was really hard to read, but you could see how her family really had shaped her into the person that she was when we meet her and throughout the story. So, like, tell us how you write your experience of writing Molly's story. And was there anything about Molly specifically you hoped would resonate with readers? Because I definitely feel like I took a lot from her. Family's a big thing. You don't have to take shit from your family.
I think, I was trying to think of where did that actually come from? And I'm actually not entirely sure where all these fairy ideas pop into your head. But I think it was about, I have this thing about consequences and taking responsibility for your actions and consequences. So I kind of wanted to explore that. And obviously, if you read the book, you'll realize that Molly's family do not do that at all. And very much about being a victim and growing out of being a victim as a child. So, everybody has terrible parts of their childhood. Some people worse than others, but we don't have to stay stuck in our childhood. And sometimes I love exploring this idea that not all families are the same. So you can raise 4 children in one family, but they can be totally different. And somehow there occasionally are cuckoos in the nest that just are raised the same way, but think totally differently. And that's kind of how I thought about Molly. And possibly because she had Jameson as well as another influence, who's just such an incredibly marvelous character, full of this amazing warmth and integrity. So she saw a different side. So I love exploring those little dynamics of family. Unfortunately, and it's a small book, so you can't go right down into plumbing the depths. But those little extra nuggets of family, how I just think they make things richer and people richer. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of things. I mean, I can't tell you exactly how it all came about because I have no idea. I'll be writing and suddenly a thought will pop into my head and, that works. So let's just put that in. And yeah, so, but she's.
Oh, Joss.
Yep, she froze for a second.
Yeah, she froze.
Okay, we have a question from Kim who asked, how did you all decide who was going to write each character?
Ooh, we just kind of really developed, just like we knew at one, I think the thing we came up with first, because we, as Josh said, we wanted to have a diverse series. We were like, okay, what's the connection? And so once we decided, and I think it was Joss who was like, once she decided, she came up with the idea of them being like these foster brothers. And I think even the accident was something that she had an idea about early on. So once we decided on that, it was just a matter of us deciding who each person we wanted to write was and what their story was going to be. So that's kind of how it came up.
Okay. So
Josh, I think Josh is back now.
Josh is back.
Sorry, I live across the world.
You are. What about the second chance romance trope felt right for Mac's romance with Molly?
I think it was just, they were just from the time that they met each other, that was it from them. Mm-hmm. That was just, that friendship was there. I wanted right from the beginning to write a second chance. I wanted him to come back to somebody. It just felt right from the beginning that it was right, that they had clicked right from being children. And again, I wanted to just develop that whole thing about putting friendship on fire. Mm-hmm. And that was really where I wanted to go with that story right from the beginning.
The second book is Best Laid Wedding Plans, Miss Karen. And it's the romance between Autumn and Gray. And I'm a sucker for all the ways you all as romance writers explore. Like, I love when they're working together on something. So when Gray returns to Moonlight Ridge, same thing. I'm temporary. I'm only going to be here for a couple of months. But Mac really persuades him to work closely with Autumn. Mostly because Molly and Autumn are best friends and Autumn's worried about her, but she has a lot going on. Autumn has a lot going on. So can you share with us your experience of writing their romance?
Yeah, I mean, so it is kind of hilarious, really. This is where you get the soap opera aspect. The fact that Gray, the really, grumpy one, who's this like acclaimed architect, his brother, Mac is the oldest, he can do whatever he wants. Eventually the other two will bend at least a little. So but yeah, Mac is like, yeah, you get stuck trying to figure out how we fix the wedding situation because it's a huge part of their business. So I like that only because he's already pulled into the situation where he doesn't want to be, he doesn't know what he's doing, he doesn't, he thinks that what Autumn does is ridiculous, basically. And because she's, a wedding planner and she'd been left at the altar. And so, he's challenging her views on love the whole book while she's doing the same thing to him. And one thing I really liked about their romance is that Autumn, in some ways, has more invested in being at Moonlight Ridge and being part of that, extended family, almost more than Gray does, because she's left her own family completely behind, left California where she lived. And, if this doesn't work, she's not sure where she can go, because this is her support system. Molly is her support system, Jameson, everyone at the resort. And so I do think, Autumn and Gray are good foils for each other, because she really, says to him, how could you possibly have this amazing family and be ready to get on a plane and leave again, I think at some point she's kind of like, even just forget about me. Like, you can't not be here. So that was the part of their romance that I liked the best. They really,
I love that part too.
Where did the left at the altar part come up? Because I was just imagining, I was like, were they all like sipping wine on the phone? Like, what's the most ridiculous thing that you can do to a wedding planner? And it's like, oh, she's jilted at the altar.
Oh yeah, well, I've been wanting to write a wedding planner left at the altar book for a while. So that had just been in the back of my head. I was like, oh, this might be my chance, because it would make sense. She needed a job at the resort. And I write a lot of working together books. So yeah, that was something that was tucked away in my head from, I don't know when.
Kim has another question. How far in advance did you guys write the trilogy? So I'm assuming it's been done for a while.
I love the look on Reese's face, because Reese, well, first off, she wrote kind of like 2 books. She wrote a lot of extra words.
A lot.
A lot. Like,
yes,
double.
There are a lot of deleted scenes that I can share.
No, I mean, I think, part of it is all 3 of us are, live on these kind of crazy deadlines, and it's just, you finish one book and you got to start another one. There's not a lot of downtime. And so I think, we're often, turning stuff in, not always at the last minute, but definitely it's a photo finish a lot of times. I think if we had to do it over again, it would have been nice to be able to read each other. Like, if I could have read Joss's book in its entirety rather than, selected scenes before I wrote my book, that might have, that would have been nice. But I will say, there's something, I'm also can get a little bit too much in my head. And so I, probably would have been like, oh my God, Joss's book is too amazing. How can I follow this up? All like a million things of self-doubt. So maybe that was better.
So are you all turning them in at the same time? Like, you?
I don't think so. I feel like I turned mine in like maybe late fall of last year.
Okay.
So mine was in about a year ago, I think. So we have about 9 months, depending on our schedules, between the time that we submit and finalize the book until it comes out. So it was probably around about last year that I was finishing up. I genuinely can't remember. It's been quite a few books since then, but basically it's normally about 9 months lead time. Okay. And the problem is you get into another book, and then you have to try and work out what you were thinking with that book. And writer's minds, you don't want to go down there. It's just it's nasty. It's like all our personalities talking to us at the same time.
You all send in the proposal, and your editor or whoever is like, great, we love it. And then I guess in my mind, it was like, okay, now you're all working on them at the same time, and they're all being turned in at the same time. But is it kind of staggered?
It was staggered.
Trilogy?
It was staggered.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was, I mean, and it wasn't even like, oh, we're waiting until Joss is finished with hers and then Karen's going. No, it wasn't like that. It's just like, where can we fit this in our lives? And with all the deadlines and stuff we have, with all the writing and stuff we're doing, how can we fit it in? That's basically how, what it was.
Right.
Okay. And so both Karen and Reese are North Carolina girls. So was there something specific, like where the inspiration for Asheville, Moonlight Ridge? Was it a no-brainer? Were y'all like, let's come up with a place, and it was like, let's set it here? Like, how did that?
So we
Well,
actually,
Reese,
okay,
you were the mini Biltmore person. You were the person who was like, let's set it around a mini version of the Biltmore. So it only makes sense, since that's in Asheville, to set it in Asheville.
well, the actual idea for Asheville actually came from Charles, because when I told Charles in New York, when we were in, I'm sorry, Charles is my editor at Desire.
I hear
So
his name quite a bit, and he's
I
awesome.
adore him. And so when we were in New York still, after Joss had the idea, and he and I went to dinner, at the conference, and I told him about it, and he was like, "Oh, it'd be really cool because you and Karen are both in North Carolina to do something in a really cool place in North Carolina like Asheville." And so he was actually the person who first gave me the idea. And I've written a book before, set in Asheville, Plan with Seduction. It has a lot of scenes in Asheville, and I loved it, and I was excited about the idea of doing it again. So we almost didn't get it in Asheville because the line had wanted us to move it somewhere else because they felt they had stories already in Smoky Mountains or whatever. And so I might have begged and begged.
Well, I think
a little.
we all did. I mean, because remember, we tried other locations and it didn't work.
Just didn't work.
Yeah.
Just nothing felt right. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, the third book, Just a Little Married, which the title, I'm like, this
Best
is
title,
such a
right?
Reese Ryan title. Waking Up Married, Just a Little Married. So it's another second chance, Travis and Riley, but then the fake marriage. So throughout the series, there is a little bit of there's a mystery which gets solved in your book. And then Travis has another secret that's revealed to him. I wasn't expecting it. He wasn't expecting it. So can you take us through? I was like, wait a minute. I had to reread the page. I was like, where did this come from? So can you walk us through writing Travis and Riley's story?
Well, I like the idea too of especially since, okay, I guess here's the other thing. So I'm not a huge Insta love person.
Like, not at all.
Yeah, I was going to say not at all.
Things that was an issue for me. So like a lot of times when we do Texas Common Club books, for instance, it's set in the month that the book comes out. So it's like basically all this stuff needs to happen in a month. So it's easier for me if they have some kind of history in the first place. So I always prefer doing history, especially if it's going to be. So I begged them, like, God, please don't make us do it in a month. Can it at least be like 3 months? And so like, can we take like a quarter a piece of the year? And so that was that part for me, is that I needed to have some expansion. But I don't know, just as we were working on this together and we're coming up with this idea, like that secret that you talked about, like I decided at some point, I'm like, hey, what if we do that?
But like, you know what? Even though I wasn't expecting it, I remember back in Mac's book, he said something about, I don't know if it was the way that Travis walked or the way that he carried himself, but like it was very similar to their father, Jameson. So when I read your book, I was like, oh, okay. I was like, Easter eggs.
It was just so much fun. And the other thing that I love doing, even like I do with the Texas Common Club book, is really trying to really incorporate the other characters. So like even in Texas Common Club, when I don't have to do it, or don't necessarily need to do it, I really try to pull at least one or two characters from like a previous book or two and really make them a part of that story. And so it was so fun doing that. The parts that I got to write with the brothers, especially their relationship when they're kind of like going through it. And Travis first arrives, he's kind of the smart ass, and just kind of seeing how their dynamic is and how it kind of softens throughout the book or whatever. Those were some of my favorite moments in the story, was writing that. So I love Riley, and I love the relationship that they have, and just kind of that was fun for me too, just seeing little things that they did together, like which reminds me of something else. I thought it was fun that we all ended up writing. They all had history. All the women had history at the place. Like I didn't realize that Autumn. I didn't realize that Autumn had went there as a child as well until I read your book. So I love that they all have this history with the place as well. So it is something that's they have very fond memories of it. So same thing for Riley, in addition to her still having these emotions about Travis and her knowing about, Travis did have a lot of secrets he had to find out, didn't he?
I was like, she is not showing Travis any mercy.
So him finding out the truth about what happened, just all of this happening. So I love seeing how their relationship kind of developed too. And I love that point in the story at which it really turned from being like him not wanting to do this to him like really seeing who she is again, or remembering who she is again, and being drawn to that. So it was a lot of fun for me. It was a lot of fun. Despite
whose idea for the mystery? Whose idea was it to put the mystery in there?
It was Josh.
You're asking things that happened like a while ago.
It was Josh. It was Josh.
Josh was okay.
Maybe. I just
She came
think
up with
because
a lot of our foundation. Yeah.
I just think that it's just, as I said before, these are small books, and the more that you can add to the reader's pleasure in just adding, whether it's a additional family elements or additional romance or additional, the brothers or this little mystery that runs through it. It's just, we just want to also as writers just do something and change something differently and, just play around and I think that you will have gathered by now that we're pretty good mates and we have fun. And so this was a fun project and everything just like kind of bubbled up and, oh yeah, that'll work. Let's just toss that in. Like, see if it works. Listen, you haven't heard some of the crazy ideas. I mean, we had some wacko ideas.
Can we hear some of the crazy ideas that didn't make it?
Oh, geez, no, you know that I'm like older than 50, right? And like my brain has turned to mush.
You are.
We had some crazy. Just originally the thoughts about who the brothers were going to be and who the characters were, and I can't actually remember anything specific, but I do remember going, okay, we should be rating this in now because it's getting a bit wild. Right. So much does Harry. I can't actually remember anything specific. I don't know if Karen and Reese can. But I remember that on our Facebook group, we were going, right, pull it back.
Right. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember. There was definitely a lot of trying to hone that mystery and make it work over the course of 3 books. Took some engineering. Just because you wanted, because you still have to have a satisfying romance and a satisfying book at the end, because not everybody's going to read all 3 books. We want everyone to read all 3 books, and you should, but not everyone's going to. So
buy the book set.
Yeah, right. It took some engineering, but we figured it out.
Yeah.
When it was a lot of fun. I mean, and then like you said, we did. I forgot about the Facebook group because right now we've been doing most of the stuff on Messenger, but we did have a Facebook kind of small private group where I would harass them a lot with, "Hey, how about this?"
Well, Reese always wants to know stuff like, "What's Autumn's signature cocktail?" and things like that, and I'm like, "Oh, I don't know."
Okay, so you've got to realize
Autumn wore glasses. I was like, I feel so seen. You don't hear very many heroines in romance novels.
Right.
And like she could not, she was honest, like I can't see
she
without my glasses.
We really wanted her to have glasses on the cover, but unfortunately because of COVID, Harlequin couldn't do, custom photo shoots. They were having to find stuff from existing photos and in their massive library, and unfortunately there's not a lot of heroines wearing glasses, but she does wear contacts a few times in the book to kind of make it work.
So I was just going to go back and say something earlier where Reese wants to know what his signature is like. Reese is like the detailed person. Reese wants to know like everything. I am like, well, whatever. We'll make it work. And we'll just fly by the seat of our pants. Yeah, whatever. And Karen's Karen's the one trying to balance the 2 of us. Like she's like trying to she's the one riding these 2 runaway horses, and I'm like way behind. Reese is like way in front, and she's going, oh my god, how am I coping with these 2? I'm going, yeah, it'll work. And Reese is like, I need to know. It was fun. fine.
What lip color would she wear? What's her favorite dress?
Exactly that. Exactly that.
Exactly.
Yes. That is true.
No,
That is an accurate representation of what happened.
We love you dearly.
Yes, we do.
And I am the other side, and I'm sure I frustrated them greatly because I'm going, yeah, whatever works, you know.
So, what do each of you have individually that's coming up next?
Okay, so I've got a couple of books between now and January coming out. So I'm just trying to remember. So in August, well, I've got this one. So in October, I've got my Presents coming out. It's a third in a series. It's called How to Tempt the Off Limits Billionaire. And then I've got a Texas Cattlemen's Club book coming out in November. And then I've got another Presents coming out in January. So that's mine for the next, till then.
Okay. So in where you are, you're in South Africa.
Yes.
What series, Sarah and I, my co-host, for the podcast, we chatted with Therese Bahari and she's in Cape Town.
Oh, I love
She gave
Therese.
us an idea of like what's popular there. What series are popular where you are?
Presents is very popular. Presents is very much a worldwide, it is popular all over the world. Therese's books are absolutely stunning. She's a really good friend of mine. She's such a divine, lovely person. Desire, not so much, because I think they are set specifically in North America. So I'd say Presents of those are the big. Unfortunately, South Africa isn't a great reading country, which is very sad. So, but Presents would be the more popular of the two.
Okay. Karen, do you have anything coming up?
I do. So I have I don't have a Desire till January after this one, but I have a new trilogy called The Little Black Book of Secrets, which is about an anonymous social media account that tries to take down all kinds of rich and powerful people. So the first book is The Problem with Playboys and comes out in January. And basically the three heroines, I really like writing female focused series.
Okay.
Where the bond is between the heroines. So in this one, all three heroines, they all come from money and power, but they're all to some degree disillusioned with it, or have been, it's not all sunshine and roses, basically. So the three heroines know each other from boarding school, and there's this basically trying to unmask this social media account. The hero in the first book is really, really, really intent on doing it, only because he's one of those people who just can't, there's always somebody who has this very highly formed sense of justice where they're like, well, you can't do that. You can't just, hide behind your phone or your computer and start telling people secrets and not have to pay for it. So anyway, so that's really fun because the kind of mystery of it goes through all three books, and it all ties into the history of the heroines in ways that they did not know, stuff that moms and grandmothers did that they didn't know about. So it's very fun. So that'll be January, March, and May next year.
Where did the idea for this come from? Because I feel like this is so relevant. I feel like I could go on ID channel right now and probably watch this.
It came from a Vanity Fair article I read about Truman Capote, of all people. And in the 70s and the 80s, he used to hang out, especially Studio 54 in New York. He would hang out with all of these socialites, all of these women who were there only because they were, came from money, basically. And he knew that he was sort of, even though he was part of their circle, it was only because of his own notoriety that he was there. Mm-hmm. And he said that he basically was waiting for the day when somebody was gonna, spin him out of that social circle. And so he kept a book where he wrote down who's sleeping with who does too much cocaine in the bathroom, who does this. And
Awesome.
yeah, so he kept all these diaries of these things that people were doing just as blackmail, basically. You know, so anyway, so that was where the idea came from. But of course, the social media account makes it more current.
Yeah.
But it all comes from, the social media account is based on a diary that someone has. So nobody knows who has it and nobody knows the origin of the diary, but there's a whole bunch of secrets inside of it.
Oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be good.
I'll buy that.
Reese, do you have anything coming up?
So Just a Little Mary comes out in October because the books do come out in sequential months. And I'm still freaking over the fact that, like, I feel like a year ago, I was like, I could never imagine writing a marriage of convenience and, you know, modern and contemporary romance. And now I have two. Because Waking Up Married is partially a Friends of Lovers, but it also is a marriage of convenience. And this one is too. So Just a Little Mary comes out October as part of this trilogy. And then the final planned book in the Bourbon Brothers series comes out. It's like December 28th or something. So it's basically a January book. And it's called The Bad Boy Experiment. It is Cole's book, finally. And then I don't have dates for it, but I can tell you that there will be more stories in that Magnolia Lake world set around a vineyard. So right now the series title that we're playing with is Valentine Vineyards. And so we'll still get to see a lot of those characters from the Abbott family. And so I'm looking forward to that because I was a little stressed about letting them go. So they'll get a chance to pop in every now and again.
I have to say that, like, because this is like the second time I've heard you say you didn't think you would ever write Marriage of Convenience. So like reading both of your books with it, I'm like, she's really playing around with this, because in Waking Up Married, the way they wake up married was hilarious. And then in this book, Travis is like literally laughing until he's crying. And then he's like, oh, wait, you're serious. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I did. And that was something I was like, at first I wasn't conscious of it, but then after a while I'm like, oh yeah, I can see how I'm rebelling against the idea of a standard, you know, marriage of convenience, because both of them I kind of played with them and kind of did them a little bit differently than you usually see them. For instance, in this book, by the time they get married, like there's already a lot of feelings and emotions going on, whereas I feel like a lot of times in marriage convenience books, they get married and then they kind of fall in love, and I feel like it's opposite in this book. So yeah.
It actually isn't easy to write marriage of convenience in the 2020s. I mean, it's actually really, really tricky from our side to make a marriage of convenience that actually makes sense and that people will buy, because there are very few circumstances where that actually works anymore. So yeah, well done, Reese.
Yeah.
You're not going to be writing one anytime soon, I don't think.
Veronica asked, what is significant and new about your characters' struggles and challenges in each story?
Veronica, that's really hard.
It is hard. That's like an essay question.
I know, right?
Like we're writers. We're not that bright.
So I think, like, okay, starting with Molly, the biggest is her family.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
felt like, and can I just say that snob Beth, I wanted to slap Beth so many times. And then even with Autumn, I felt like it was family. All three of them, I think it's like their actual family.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But family is where so much of our trauma comes from, and how we see love initially. So much of what happens in our childhood colors how we see relationships later. So a lot of those conflicts about falling in love are actually, when you boil down to it, rooted in what happened within your family, whether it's abandonment or unfairness or whatever. I think that's where so much of it comes from. So all of my characters their trauma is based, I think, all in the family and how we deal with that, because it all comes out later. I don't know if that answered your question at all. Sorry.
That's what I was gonna say. It's just like the whole thing with it's for both the heroes and the heroines. You know, they have some serious family issues that they have to work through. But yeah, that's definitely for me. Both on both sides, they're both dealing with family issues. And then I think sometimes you have this family and you're just like, okay, you just got to cut them away. They're no good. And then I think for both of them, they find themselves at a place where they need to kind of deal with the family issues and figure out if there's a way to move forward or to keep that family connection. So sometimes it's best to just walk away, and sometimes you want to try to make it work in some way. And so I think both Travis and Riley find themselves in that position.
Right. One thing I'll say is that in my book, Autumn has a dad who is, he's a Hollywood producer, and he's been accused of sexually harassing actresses and other women in the film industry over the years. And I was really interested because that has happened a lot. That is in our world right now. But I was fascinated by the idea of, there are other people who are hurt by this. It's not always, the direct victims. And, there's a lot of pressure for people who know that person to fully disavow them. And Autumn chooses to do that. She chooses to say, I'm not going to be a part of your life anymore because of the things that you did. And that's very admirable, but it's also difficult because she had to leave it's not easy to just walk away from your family and say, okay, I'm going to go do something else, sorry. So I liked writing that character because she is really caught in this situation that's a little impossible. Like, she can't really come out of it unscathed. It's gonna affect all aspects of her life, no matter what.
She says something at one point like, my dad never did anything directly to me, but she still needed to separate herself from that life. And I was like, yeah, she's really caught up in this. And then he does something at the end, towards the end of the book, and I was like, no, Dad, I was kind of rooting for you.
Yeah, it rears its ugly head, but it's good just because, I think they always need their gut check moment, right? In a romance, they need their, reckoning.
And I think one other kind of significant struggle throughout all three books is that guilt because of the accident that happened, and they all interpreted it different ways. And luckily in Travis's book, it kind of wraps up. But in each book, we kind of see each brother as they come home, make them, and like, you really do want them to just be back together. So yeah, that was a tough one, because I would like you said earlier, Karen, by the time you get to Travis's book, you're like, oh gosh, he's about to come in and just shut the house down. He's not going to be feeling it. But they needed each other. I felt like they needed each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think they always did, because that was right from the beginning. That was their families. That was they got scooped up by this amazing man, and that became their entire focal point. And so it's for them to be ripped apart for a decade or so. They all felt in their own little ways lost. And so that was kind of a love story in itself, I think. Mm-hmm. The brothers coming back to themselves and coming back to choosing each other again, because they had to make that choice to actually choose love and to choose a family again. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think we did okay there.
Yeah.
y'all did great. So before we wrap up, we've talked about what you ladies have coming out. Are there any desires or presents, since Joss writes for both, that y'all are excited about, that you want to shout out, you think people should read?
Oh my God, there's so many good desires coming out. It's kind of crazy. And of course, I can never remember anyone's titles.
Definitely excited for Laquette's.
Yes, I mean, and that cover is so gorgeous. I tweeted about it the other day. It's just...
Aren't the covers awesome?
Yeah.
Shout out to the Harlequin art department. Yeah. They are just knocking the covers out of the park.
Yeah.
Yes,
they really are.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing is that, what we do all, our editors are pretty tough on us. So we all of us, all the desire authors, we have to write good books, and they're fun. And so I think whoever you pick up, it's going to be a fun book. It's going to be, and you know what? I just think maybe just choose different books and maybe pick up a different author from somebody that you haven't read before, or a different premise. And, you might find your next best author. I certainly have, you just, let's try this one. And it's just, well, whoa, okay, cool. I mean, I remember reading Karen's book I can't remember what it was, coming back from the States 2 years ago when we had this conversation about these books. And I confess that was the first book I've read. I can't remember. You gave it to me. But,
A Cinderella Seduction, maybe. That was the book I signed when we did the Harlequin signing.
Yes,
together.
I think so.
That was the book. Anyway.
But, I'm just saying, just pick up a desire and try somebody different, and, it'll be great. They really are.
They're all
editors
amazing.
are tough.
They're all like J.C. Lee. I love her books. Robin Covington, Adriana Herrera. I got LaQuette's book she just sent me. I'm so excited. Niobe Bryant. I have this
Nadine Gonzalez.
I have these. I have this huge stack of books. I have a Nadine Gonzalez. They're all here, and so I'm trying to figure out when I'm gonna have time to read my way through them. So I have been reading my way through them. And I did forget one thing to say when you asked what we had coming up. And actually tonight is the Vivian Awards, the inaugural Vivian Awards. And my book, the third book in the Bourbon Brothers series, Engaging the Enemy, which is Parker's story, is up for contemporary short. So that is tonight. So that's what
Good luck. Having fun.
Live at 9 p.m. from rwa.org. So
Congratulations.
And you look stunning, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Well, this has been such a blast, and I'm so honored to have the opportunity to chat with you. So thank you for having me, and thank you for everybody that's watching.
Thank you for moderating. You did an amazing job.
Thank you. So everybody that's watching, make sure Love Sweet Arrow has a link in their bio where you can pre-order the box where you get copies of all 3 books from the trilogy, a candle from Novelly Yours, bookmarks, and possible other goodies.
Right.
So make sure you check them out on Instagram and Twitter, all the places where they have their link in their bio, the link tree, and you can pre-order it. And the trilogy is amazing. Please read all 3 books in order.
In order, yes.
Yes.
Or else, if you read my book before you read the others, you're gonna be mad at yourself because it's gonna give away a bunch of stuff. So definitely read them in order. They're standalones, but read them in order and read all of them. We said so. Okay.
Well, everyone have a lovely day. Thank you for watching. Thank you to Love Sweet Arrow for putting this on, and we will see you all later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.